Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to KPMG and NUCC's networking meeting. We are very pleased to be able to host this seminar today. My name is Kjersti Beringer, and I'm working as a partner here in KPMG in the Global Mobility Services Group. We hope you will enjoy this morning session and that you find the talks on the agenda interesting. And now I will hand over to Kjetil Pedersen, who will lead us through the day. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Dear Mr. Ambassador, dear ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kjetil Pedersen, and I'm the Managing Director of the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to NUCC's first networking meeting this 2017. And we are very pleased that we're co-organizing it, and it's hosted by KPMG. They are very grateful they are providing the venue, and we are very also looking forward to seeing or hearing your expert advice on issues that is very relevant for many of the companies present here today, working in a Norwegian-Ukrainian space. But we don't have that much time, so without much further ado, I'm going to give the words to my good colleague, Linda Oksnes, that will be the moderator for today's session.
Hello, I'm Linda Oksnes. I'm project manager for ICT in NUCC. And I'm happy to see you all here today. There's been a lot happening in Ukraine over the last year since the Maidan revolution, and we're delighted to have several excellent speakers who have been following this process closely. In particular, the new Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine to the Kingdom of Norway. He's been in office since last fall. Please welcome Mr. Ambassador Vyacheslav Yasyuk.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today at this joint NUCC KPMG business networking meeting. In my first 6 months in Norway, I was honored to get acquainted with many present guests of this meeting. But of course, for me, it's my first opportunity to meet in this format. I can't help pointing out that it is quite a powerful signal that KPMG decided to become a co-sponsor of this event. KPMG is widely renowned for its strong skills in identifying future successes, so this already gives us good reasons to conclude that the Ukrainian-Norwegian trade and investment cooperation has a very promising future. I'd like to start with expressing Ukraine's high appreciation of the activities of the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. We consider NUCC as one of the most effective instruments in fostering business ties between Ukraine and Norway. Today is an appropriate opportunity for me to thank Mr. Amund Myklebust for his important contribution to our bilateral partnership in his previous capacity as the NUCC Executive Director. I have no doubt he will continue to strengthen relations between our countries, and I wish him every success in his new important job. But I would like, of course, to welcome Mr. Kjartan Tveitnes Pedersen as the NUCC newly appointed Executive Director. January known as an inauguration month, so we may consider this meeting as Mr. Pedersen inauguration. In his new role, he may count on every support from the government of Ukraine and on my personal support. Ladies and gentlemen, in several days, on the 5th of February, Ukraine and Norway will mark the 25th anniversary since the establishment of their diplomatic relations. I think that the Grand Prince Yaroslav the Wise and the King of Norway, Harald Hardrada, could slightly disagree with our modern chronology. Indeed, the relationship between our nations is not limited to the past quarter century only and has very deep historical roots. But today I can state with confidence that relations between Ukraine and Norway are strong and flourishing. The recent visit by the President of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, to Norway proved that the Ukrainian-Norwegian partnership is as strong as never before. But we are also aware that our partnership has a very important unrealized potential, and this cannot be more true when we are talking about our bilateral trade and economic cooperation. Indeed, when we look at the actual figures, for example, of our bilateral trade in goods and services, we have to recognize that they are rather modest. At the same time, there are good reasons to be confident about bright prospects of the Ukrainian-Norwegian trade and investment cooperation. First, the Ukrainian and Norwegian economies are to a very large extent complementary and mutually reinforcing. The Norwegian welfare state model, Norway's open, modern and well-functioning economy, its advanced technology, especially in the sphere of renewable energy, its status as a net importer of agricultural products, its important financial reserves. These and many other factors make Norway an extremely attractive partner for Ukraine. At the same time, Ukraine's fast-growing consumer markets, comprehensive modernization of many traditional branches of our economy, it's Europe's fastest growing ICT sphere, the importance of our agricultural sector, our highly educated population, our geographical proximity and low cost of production engage more and more Norwegian companies to consider Ukraine as a new promising opportunity. Second, already now we have a number of effective instruments and tools that facilitate the economic cooperation between Ukraine and Norway. Of course, we have a free trade agreement between Ukraine and the EFTA states, and it is important to use more effectively all opportunities and the advantages of this agreement. Norway is also benefiting from the implementation of the association agreement between Ukraine and the European Union. Last September, Ukraine and Norway launched successfully the activities of our Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Business and Economic Cooperation, and we expect that this commission will serve as a powerful driving force for strengthening our economic ties. And we have at our disposal a number of proactive actors, both multilateral, such as, for example, Nordic Environment Finance Corporation, NEFCO, and bilateral, such as I already mentioned, the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, who are making important contribution to enhancing our economic ties. And third, and most importantly, today both Ukraine and Norway have a strong political will to create conditions for further fostering our bilateral ties and investment cooperation. As I mentioned, we had recently a very successful visit of the President of Ukraine to Norway. Both the Ukrainian and Norwegian sides consider this visit as a historic one, not only because this was first ever visit by the Ukrainian head of state to Norway, but also because this visit helped Ukraine and Norway to understand even better their potentials and their importance for each other. I would say that in a way today Ukraine and Norway are rediscovering themselves for each other as important partners. And of course bilateral trade and investment was one of the most prominent topics of talks and high-level meetings within this visit, and the visit also provided a unique opportunity for our President to convey to the Norwegian potential exporters and investors the seriousness and far-reaching character of our current internal transformations. You all know that in Ukraine we reached a program of far-reaching reforms. These are very difficult and painful transformations, but for the first time in the history of independent Ukraine, they have already started to bring fruits. The anti-corruption reform, law enforcement reform, judicial reform, deregulation reform, acceleration of modernization in all spheres. In the past 3 years, Ukraine is undergoing the real and systematic changes. As a direct result of these reforms, and despite the continuing hybrid warfare waged by Russia in our eastern regions, Ukraine has achieved macroeconomic stabilization and restored its economic growth. After almost 10% GDP fall in 2015, we achieved 1.5 GDP growth in last year, and it is forecasted by the IMF that this year our economy will grow by 2.5%. Also, the reforms already now have contributed to a better business environment and simplified registration of foreign investments. Reforms already now have eliminated many obstacles, tax, customs, bureaucratic, that hinder business and discourage investors. As one of the confirmations of this, Ukraine has climbed 32 ranks since 2014 in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report. All this makes Ukraine today a uniquely promising economy. Of course, we expect that these comprehensive reforms will raise the attractiveness of Ukraine for our foreign friends and partners, and here I have in mind, first of all, the Kingdom of Norway. At the same time, we also clearly understand that the success of our internal transformations represents the most effective strategy for us to prevail in responding to the current external and internal challenges facing Ukraine. So I would like to conclude my remarks by reiterating my strong belief in the future of the partnership between Ukraine and the Kingdom of Norway. Vi vill styrka vårt samarbete med Norge. Thank you very much, and I would like to wish you a very successful meeting. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would also like to add that during your 6 months in office, you've been an important supporter for Norwegian-Ukrainian trade and business cooperation. Now the next speaker has been the counselor at the Norwegian Embassy to Ukraine from 2014 to 2016. He will share his experience from this time. And he's now Senior Advisor in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Please welcome Mr. Richard Scarborough.
Mr. Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here among friends again. Now that for the time being I'm slightly removed from the orbit of Ukraine, it's a very good feeling to still be remembered and invited to such meetings. Let me start by expanding just a few words on what Mr. Ambassador mentioned of the very old relations between Norway and Ukraine. I remember I was tasked to write our foreign minister's speech at the Kiev Mohyla Mogilyanska Academia in 2006, and I was writing about the ancient relations between Norway and Ukraine, having in mind, of course, Prince Volodymyr and King Harald. And the language department, they, in one stroke, removed the word ancient, arguing that, no, ancient is like really old. And I was saying, but this is 1,000 years old. It's like, it's the medieval era. But obviously they wanted to, reserve the use of the word ancient for, I don't know, antique as in, Greek and Roman times. Even though I argue that we have the word antique, so let's use antique for like 2,000 years old, and ancient could be 1,000. Still, I lost the battle. This was not really the topic I was invited to talk to you about. Rather, how did I experience change in Ukraine from 2014 to 2016 while I was posted to Kiev? Well, of course, having already mentioned 2014, you will understand that I was not as privileged as my ambassador at the time, who spent 5 years seeing the whole range of transformation from 2011 until 2016. So by the time I arrived in 2014, I felt that a lot of changes had already happened. There was an incredible willingness to cooperate jointly with us in the various ministries and authorities. And there was an openness that we felt in so many places, and a keenness to learn about Norway, to learn about other countries, and to try to find bits and pieces of experience that could be used in Ukraine. But let me still share one of the, for me, defining experiences. Well, the first half year of my presence in Ukraine, I think, was similar to Mr. Ambassador's first half year in Norway. We had the Prime Minister visiting for the first time ever, so I didn't have much time for doing anything else than that and was hardly out of Kiev. But early 2015, I went to a youth seminar sponsored by the embassy and organized jointly with a local institute. This was in the south of Ukraine, and we were engaging youth on the future of Ukraine in terms of its strategic foreign position and foreign policy. And attention turned to reforms. And I was saying that I believe we all have to see how can we contribute on a very practical level. And so I mentioned that at the embassy, in our visa department, our colleagues had started looking at applications from Ukrainians indirectly employed by Norwegian companies, and singling out obvious discrepancies in their payment statements, and discreetly contacting Norwegian mother companies, telling them that, guys, are you sure these are the correct figures? And maybe you would like to check these with your local Ukrainian daughters, just, you know, make sure that they have the economy to get a visa and all of that, and that everything is just as it should be. And there was a political analyst, one of the more acclaimed, well-known political analysts with us from Kiev at the time, and he was picking up on this theme, and he was saying that, well, you know, this is precisely the way we need to go about this. And he said, well, you know, before I was also accepting payments without reporting anything to the tax authorities for political consultancies. But guys, you know, this has to stop. I'm not doing this anymore now. We have legitimate authorities that we voted for, and they need resources to run the country. And we, of course, we have to make sure they use the resources rightly, but we have to pay our taxes. And to me, having a senior figure right there and then admitting that this is how I need to change, and I have committed to doing a personal contribution to the change of the country in front of a large young audience, this was a great change. This was, to me, a defining moment in how my how to say, my belief in the future of Ukraine was really strengthened. And you know, one of those moments where your heart just melts away. There were other similar, very positive experiences as well. I would like to highlight, Mr. Ambassador mentioned the reform of police and justice sector. On the streets of Kiev, you've all been there and seen it, how the police behave so differently from what they used to. I was once, I have to admit, subject of this treatment myself. I was parking my car and I was following the Norwegian rule that in front of a pedestrian crossing you have to leave 5 meters space and not park there, right? But it turns out that according to Ukrainian law, it's 10 meters. So I was very politely approached by a policeman who told me, well, if I would please just move my car backwards just a little bit. And of course I did. You know, I'm sure I'm talking to people who have all the same experience as yourselves, but it's a great thing to see. And it was even greater to see how they would, you know, go about some of the really clogged places, some in front of, say, the largest shopping malls, and, you know, get the parking situation sorted out so the traffic could start flowing again. It's a great experience. I must say, it takes a certain tenacity. It takes, I think it has to be followed up over years in order for people to change their habits. So even while I was in Kiev, I saw a tendency towards a little bit of slack, like we did this for several weeks now, so let's just take a break, and you know what happens. And I'm excited about how they will be able to follow up this reform of the police in terms of some of the key figures now already being out of the process. To me, it's a little bit surprising that they would start removing people already, but of course, this is a sovereign country that decides how to go about this business itself. This is one of the observations I make. I was also asked to say a couple of words on my expectations for the future of Ukraine. I will start by saying that there are indeed many positive changes still ongoing. I would like to underline how every public official now has to declare all of his property or her income and so on. This is a process of transparency, which is remarkable. I am hopeful. I really wish that this will turn out a useful tool for civil society, for the media in Ukraine to be a strong proponent and factor in the cleaning up of Ukrainian politics and public issues. Civil society, I'm a big fan of Ukrainian civil society. It has a remarkable talent pool. It shows the very strong commitment and engagement of young people, which brings me to my next point. I have great faith in the youth of Ukraine. I'm sure I'm not the only one to have heard so many stories about areas where people have doubts about the new ways of doing things and perhaps have this tendency to look back to the time when Moscow was in charge and everything felt so safe and nice. And time and again you hear that in the places where this sentiment is supposed to be strongest, a lot of the time it's about all those family conflicts with the young people trying to convince their elder family members that, but grandma, but dad, this is how it has to be. This is the better way. And once again, this really strengthens my belief in the future of Ukraine. I think we can probably agree that today there are a few clouds in the skies, in the sense that the external environment of Ukraine is seems a little bit uncertain. I hope I shall be proven wrong, that there will be strong support for Ukraine in the future, but I think the best Ukraine can do today is to continue its reforms, to strengthen itself vis-à-vis the aggressive neighbor in the east, and to strengthen other nations' commitment to Ukrainian reforms too. I have to admit, I'm a little bit, well, not skeptical, but disappointed with how the political life is sometimes greeting new reforms. What I've seen in my time is that many important reforms have had so much resistance, and some of them have even been stopped in their tracks precisely because of this resistance. We all know the tendency to hark back to easy political slogans like "vote for us and we will increase the pensions and create more jobs," with no reality in the schemes provided on how to do this. And I fully agree with Mr. Suk on how the economy has been stabilized, and yet you see very strong attacks today on Mrs. Gontareva and the National Bank. I think, as always, there can be reasons to criticize any official's conduct, but I think it has to start with crediting her and her team for the part they played in this, which is another positive achievement. But in spite of all of this, I sincerely hope that the Ukrainian political leaders will follow the voters' need and wishes for a modern Ukraine that operates according to European standards. And in closing, I want to say that I also have great faith in the average Ukrainian voter, citizen. He or she, in my mind, in general, well, I touched upon the age difference, but in general, people seem to know precisely what they want. They want a modern European society where European values and standards guide how things are done and how people can achieve according to their ability. And I'm hopeful, I really hope that Ukrainian politicians will be able to deliver for the Ukrainians on what they want. I believe that this is something that in one way or another, the Ukrainians will make sure that this is going to happen. So it's just the better way for the leaders of Ukraine to realize that the sooner they adopt this strategy in full, the better for all of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. And as King Harald went to Ukraine, we in NUCC also want to see Norwegian businesses explore the opportunities in Ukraine. And my colleague Kjartan and I will update you on the trend and opportunities in Ukrainian-Norwegian bilateral business cooperation. I will leave the floor to Kjartan first.
Yes. Well, it's a new year, and that also means new trade statistics. So then we can also see what happened last year, which is always interesting. There has been some, first of all, there's different ways of looking at statistics, and that comes especially to mind when we look at the statistics from the last few years from Ukraine. Because one way of looking at statistics is that you use the Ukrainian way of using it, and then you include petroleum in the trade of goods. And in the Norwegian way of doing it, we don't include the petroleum because that shifts the balance quite substantially. So this is one way of doing it, which means that the year 2015 was actually the highest ever in Norwegian-Ukrainian trade. Together, $781 million US, 6.1 billion NOK, which is quite substantial. But this is because in 2014 and 15, Statoil and Naftogaz had a deal on export of natural gas. If you look at in the Norwegian numbers, it looks quite different. And this is sort of the traditional trade of goods, which is then excluding services and also then petroleum. And as we can see, it's then last year's trade was 1.4 billion NOK, which is an increase from the normal trade of goods of 2015. And we are relatively positive that this is sort of a start of a return to normality when it comes to the trade between Norway and Ukraine. But it is sort of evident that the political and economic turmoil in 2014 and 2015 has taken its toll on the trade. You can also see that the balance in trade is negative for Ukraine. Norway exports more than Ukraine exports to Norway. If you look at the Norwegian exports to Ukraine for the last 3 years, we see that almost everything is Norwegian seafood going to Ukraine. And it had a drop. 2014 was also not a very good year when it comes to seafood, but it had a low mark on 2015 and then up again now and returning hopefully to normality. But Roman Panko from Pelagia, the largest seafood player and a member of ours, will tell you more about seafood trade, which is complex. But there are some also some positive signs, is that there's a rebound in iron and steel exports from last year, and the same is the case in plastic raw material. So because the Norwegian seafood export is so big, it looks small, but 100 million NOK it's still quite a lot. If you look at the Norwegian imports from Ukraine, the total import was 351 million NOK in last year, and we saw an increase in manufactured goods, that being everything from prefabricated houses to skis. Skis are actually the single biggest export product from Ukraine to Norway. So yeah, we like skiing, so there's a Fisher factory in the west of Ukraine, in Mukachevo, who's producing a lot of skis. Same here with machinery. It's had an increase. It's also boat building, vessel building, which is very, very positive that we see signs that it's rebounding, because that had a big spike in 2009, 10, 11, when there was a lot of hulls built in shipports on the coast. Also, there is a drop in chemical products used in fertilizers, ammonia. But the sad fact is that we see, in maybe the area where we sort of identified as the highest potential, we see a big drop in food trade. And this is something that we really want to change, and we believe is a very sort of low-hanging fruit when it comes to the trade between Norway and Ukraine. Ukraine produces very high-quality agricultural products, and Norway needs a lot of imports. We import more than 50% of our foods. So here there's a discrepancy, and someone, hopefully in this room, will have to fill this discrepancy. the reason why it's gone down is that animal feed has dropped significantly. Animal feed for cattle. But there is some products of honey and fruits and vegetables, and also vegetable oil increasing. But there is we believe there's a high potential here. So please take note of this. There is a bilateral free trade agreement on agriculture between our two countries. It's part of the EFTA agreement, but this is a side agreement. There are possibilities in this FTA. Of course, we would like it to be better and more products included, and we're working on doing this. But there are opportunities, so please have a look at it. And Ukrainian agribusiness is increasingly European-oriented. They're getting their certificates and their logistical option improved, and the custom clearance is less of an issue than has been before. So, yeah. And also just mentioning one sort of joker also, and Roma will probably say more about this, but Norway have a huge agricultural industry, and we need agricultural products in the feed for this fish. And vegetable oil, soya, sunflower, etc. One other aspect, energy. There's which also would not necessarily pop up in the trade of goods, but sorry, some Christmas illness still. Yeah, but there are reforms and large need of energy independence in Ukraine, which is an opportunity for Norwegian suppliers, and also, of course, in energy efficiency and energy saving. And Norwegian companies in these areas are huge, and we believe this will eventually lead to increased Norwegian engagement in the Ukrainian energy sector. And we're also happy to say that this is ongoing. There are several processes ongoing now within, for instance, in hydropower. Yes. Then Linda will say something about the trade in services. Yeah.
Thank you. Sadly, there's SSB Statistics Norway do not provide any statistics on bilateral trade in services. But what we know is that services are important for both Norway and Ukraine. It constitutes half of Norway's mainland export and about a fifth of Ukraine's export. For Norway, Norwegian service export are dominated by maritime and offshore services, but also ICT and tourism and consultancy are important. Europe is Norway's largest market, receiving about 70% of the export, but it is expected that emerging economies will be more important in the future, and then in particular for ICT businesses. In Ukraine, ICT is the dominating sector. It's the third most valuable export item today, and it's expected to be the second shortly, only after agriculture. According to Ukrastat, the statistical service in Ukraine, around 60% of Ukrainian export to Norway are services. There's been the export has slowed down since 2010, but have shown positive growth since 2015, so it's picking up again. And as I mentioned, IT is important. It's two fast-growing sectors in both Norway and Ukraine. Also, when you look at NUCC members, around 1/4 of our 85 members are operating in the IT sphere. We believe that this is a sector where there is great potential. First, Norway needs IT competence in order to meet the need to, so many industries are going through a digitalization process, and the need for IT services are only expected to grow in the future. And according to ICT Norway's member survey, the lack of IT competence is one of the largest impediments to growth in the Norwegian IT sector. And then you have Ukraine at the other side. It's emerging, it's a fast-growing IT sector. It has established itself as an important IT and outsourcing destination in Europe. We also have several Norwegian companies like Norwegian Evry and Itera, which has successfully managed to use the resources in Ukraine. And also, which Richard commented on as well, what struck me the first time I went to Ukraine is this enthusiasm and will to change among young Ukrainians. And the IT sector in Ukraine now is becoming one of the most popular sectors among young, talented Ukrainians. So what makes Ukraine attractive is this combination of high competence. Ukraine has a long engineering tradition and the low cost levels. It's also a study by a Norwegian company who looked at the quality of outsourcing services. Ukraine was ranked a second only after Argentina in the quality of the outsourcing services delivered. And it also has Central and Eastern Europe's largest pool of IT specialists, around 100,000 IT professionals, and it's around 15,000 being educated every year. And it's also close to Europe. So Ukraine might seem far away, but Kyiv is not further away than Paris. You're just waiting for a direct flight. And also we believe that, and we also seen from some of the company's experiences, that cooperation across border is fostering innovation and exchange ideas and experiences. And we are positive about the future. Ukraine is becoming more and more every day integrated into the European market. ICT companies are already global players. And also the Norwegian-Ukrainian business cooperation is strengthened. And here this picture is from the large business conference we had last year related to the Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko's visit to Norway. We had around 300 participants, and NUCC will now forward try to follow up on this work, try to help Norwegian and Ukrainian businesses. And Kjartan will tell you more later what we're doing. So then I'm finished, and I will now leave the floor to Roman Pankov. He's business coordinator in Pelagia, a large producer of pelagic fish. He will tell you more about experiences from a company in Ukraine, and he will also tell you a success story from our Young Entrepreneur program last year, which we are organizing together with Noor University, and this year Taras Shevchenko National University. So please, Roman.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Roman, and I'm representing a company called Pelagia. Today I would like to share with you the latest development of seafood export and import between Norway and Ukraine. So Pelagia is a leading producer of pelagic fish for human consumption and a major provider of essential feed ingredients to domestic market. It has currently 26 factories operating in the northern Norway. Its food division exports nearly 100% of all its production abroad, and all the feed is currently sold to a domestic market to the biggest producers of fish feed. Yes, when it comes to involvement in Ukraine, Pelagia has a 72% ownership of a import company, in Ukraine, 50% of a cold store located in Nikolaev, and also we are part owner of a small shop in Kiev. As you already know, historically, seafood has been a major export goods from Norway to Ukraine, amounting almost to 80% of total export. And Pelagia is exporting 50% of this total seafood export. As you can see, however, the export has been decreasing in the late years. And what could be the reasons for this? Well, the first and most obvious is, of course, the quota regulation of Norway. One can see that if the quota goes up or down, consequently, the export is increasing and decreasing at the same time. For example, capelin, which has been a huge demand from Ukraine through all the years, has been decreased more than 20 times in the past years, just because the quota has decreased. And in the near future, unfortunately, Norway won't be able to supply any capelin just because it's not allowed to catch this kind of fish. Also, Ukrainian market is extremely price sensitive when it comes to fish. One can see that in 2012 and 13, when CPI inflation rate was close to zero, the amount of salmon products was almost as double. Salmon products is a more expensive alternative to a protein source than pelagic fish. We can see the same development for other reprocessed, marinated, filleted products as well. Because of the Russian ban of seafood import, we have had a strong increase in competition for our competitors. So UK, Faroe Island and Iceland have highly increased the volumes to Ukrainian market, and they're doing it on very competitive prices. So Norway has sometimes trouble to compete with this. Also, as you know, that the general world population is growing and the average household income increase. The negative side of it is that young generation simply prefers chicken or meat towards fish products, especially herring products. And one of the last things to mention is, of course, the problems with export we have had with the customs and veterinary certificates and all these things. Fortunately, the cooperation between the Norwegian and the Ukrainian side has been good, and we have so far successfully solved all these kind of issues. So I hope in the future we will have less problems importing fish to Ukraine. So with the business and economy stabilization in Ukraine and increased Norwegian quota, we expect exports to Ukraine rise. Yes, enough of the export. Let's talk about import. Now I know a little about Ukrainian imports to Norway, so let's stick to seafood again. I would like to share with you a success story happened last year. I was part in a program called Young Entrepreneurs, organized by NUCC. It is a program where 20 young people were gathered together, both from Norway and Ukraine, to work together on various business cases. For me personally, it was one of the memorable events in 2016. I was able to find new friends, meet new people. My first time visit to Ukraine was last year, and I was able to learn the culture and many good things. So we were assigned to a seafood case, as none of us were previously experienced in aquaculture sector. We had to find ingredients for Norwegian fish feed industry. As marine resources are quite limited, the sector is currently searching for alternative vegetable ingredients, and Ukraine happens to be one of the best suppliers of such ingredients in the world. So we didn't know anything. We started from the scratch. So we found out which ingredients seafood sector was using at the moment, and started to look for these ingredients in the Ukrainian market. Well, as you can see, that most of the ingredients are not pure. They are reprocessed matter, such as soy protein concentrate or corn gluten. So we were actually surprised that it was not that easy to find such products on Ukrainian market. We got an impression that majority of the producers were concentrating on the high volume whole grain products. But we continued and found some. We tried to contact. Some of them were not that interested in doing business with abroad. Some of them didn't take us seriously, and of course some were just waiting for this opportunity to come. So we introduced Norwegian part to Ukrainian, and it didn't take much time before the Norwegian part traveled to Ukraine to inspect the goods. The outcome of their visit was absolutely amazing. They were surprised about the size of the economy, the size of factories, the quality of the product. So we continued to work harder, further, how to develop all this supply chain, how to deliver goods to Norway, and the result is currently that we have signed a contract between Ukraine and Norway to supply 6,000 tons of corn gluten for this year, starting from January. And this is only the first step, as there are other products that are very interested for Norway. And this might seem a very small amount in the beginning, but it's the way to start gaining trust, to find new opportunities, maybe investments, as the growth of Norwegian market is expected to grow enormously. If today 1 million tons of fish of salmon is produced, then by 2050 it is expected to be 5 million. So it's a huge growth, and here lies very high potential for increase of export of vegetable raw materials to Norwegian market. So I would like, again, thank you, NUCC, to organize such Young Entrepreneurs program, particularly to Linda, Kjartan, and Henrik. Thank you very much, and I wish you good luck with the next generation of young entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman. We think your business case is really inspiring to all of us, and we wish you the best of luck. And now I'm happy to introduce the next speaker. He is a partner at Asters, one of Ukraine's leading law firms, which also have experience with Norwegian businesses. Mr. Konstantin Soliar. He is a returning expat and expert in corporate taxation. And he will tell you a little bit about what these changes in Ukraine actually means for doing business. Please, Konstantin.
Can you just launch the presentation, right? Oh, here. So I press this one, right? And you press Shift F5, right? Because it's an active one. Okay, thanks. Well, my presentation is going to be about Ukraine going a bit upper in the ease of doing business. It will be also covering some initiatives we have in the recent years. So as you see, we're going back and forth, and in recent years, in 2016, we gained the index of 8. And I know that there are many initiatives right now for us to introduce the legislation which specifically will bring us to the way better position. There is an active work going on. So let's go and see a bit in terms of what's the statistics which help us to a bit improve. This is a comparison for just 1 year. So we gained some points in starting a business. They decreased some formalities. The major shift was protecting minority investors, and also one of the shifts were enforcing of contracts. So we'll start with corporate laws, because usually investors come to the country, set up corporate presence, and at some point will subject themselves to Ukrainian corporate law. The recent developments is that Ukraine has allowed derivative suits. This is the suit when a shareholder can, in the name of the company, can sue the directors of the company because they did something wrong. These derivative suits are allowed. So for a shareholder to be allowed to file such a suit, you need to own at least 10% of shares in the company. The idea behind this threshold was that sometimes a very minor shareholders, like only 1 share, 2 share, can just attack company, make some disturbance to gain some points, like through court procedural way. So they introduced 10% threshold. So it's not like your minority shareholder trying to play around. We had some improvements in terms of interest party transactions. Interest party transactions, like parties with self-interest, when some board director or like official of the company who has the power to make to engage the company into businesses, has some self-interest or self-dealing purposes. The law would require this person to actually disclose such things. And the improvements it brought is that under the company charter, under the law, the company can actually set up threshold by itself. What's the deal when there is self-interest? What's the amount of the deal when these self-interest parties will be subject to a regulation? The other thing is that when, for instance, the board comes to approval, the supervisory boards come to approval of this interested party deal, now the law would require that the board conducts an audit by independent auditor of this deal. And also in cases where for instance, the majority of supervisory board members are self-interested in this deal, the law will allow, if there is at least 1 independent person on the board, this person can approve it. Introduction of independent directors concept. Well, the definition of independent directors has been a bit, increased to to cover a lot of ties, which the person can be like family ties, indirect influence, which the person may be subject to. So the person who is appointed as an independent director has to meet the criteria. Some of these stringent criteria are that this person should not receive any income from the company like in 1 year before becoming a director, and there is a stringent regulation of what kind of income this person can receive. For the state-owned companies, or the companies which the state owns of 50% of shares in the company, independent directors now are mandatory to be introduced in their boards. Okay, well, our corporate legislation is a bit outdated. Well, it's not a bit, it's actually outdated. It was outdated. Now there is a strong force among civil society and think tanks and lots of lawyers, lots of my colleagues working to bring it a bit into compliance. So the initiative will be first to allow debt to equity conversion. When, like, you know, you're a shareholder, the company owes you money, or you just, you know, or you're not a shareholder, you're just a creditor. They're like, they want to put this mechanism of conversion into shares if you're willing to. They want to, as you know, shareholders agreements, when by concluding an agreement between shareholders, you can basically regulate like voting and all other things, how you need to govern a company. Not the way the law prescribes. So basically, so the idea is to put these agreements in place for limited liabilities companies so that investors can agree on the mechanism how they deal with the company. The exclusion of shareholders from LLCs, we had unfortunately a bit of bad track of majority shareholders trying to exclude minority shareholders from limited liability companies. And the procedure now is that they just need to vote and say that minority shareholders are somehow not helping the company to reach its objectives. Now there is a strong incentive to change this, that majority shareholders won't be able to exclude the minority shareholders while they will file a petition to court, and the court will consider anything to decide. Because before that, they will just exclude, and minority shareholder go to court and try to win something. But now court will listen to the arguments and then decide. I mean, but this is the draft. It's just a draft, but just to see what is coming. Again, significant and interested party transaction, the same which I just described for just the companies, they want to put it for LLCs. They want to introduce quit out and sell out rights for shareholders. Basically what this means is that when majority shareholder will buy a company, it can forcibly buy the shares of minority shareholders, like fairly priced. And the way for minority shareholders is when majority buys and minority shareholder doesn't want to be part of this company, can just, you know, sell it like under the same price. Protection of private property. Another area important for investors, because you invest and you need to be protected with your property. So company shares. Well, as a prior year initiative, one of the prior year initiatives was that the change of ownership in shares in limited liability companies specifically, they ease the formalistic requirements. So you can just sell the shares very easily. And some people start abusing it heavily. And there were some numerous raider attacks on businesses. So they put back some mechanism of protection. So now the transfer of corporate rights needs to be subject to the deal should be subject to notary certification at least, and they increase liabilities of parties involved in any illegal transfer of shares. This actually put us a bit down in the index of doing business, because the more formalities you put, the more thresholds you introduce, it actually gets you into more complexities of doing business. But this was an important safeguard to come back. But the progressive initiative was with the immovable property, for instance. Now with the immovable property, like you own a property and there is some action going on, like creditors are trying to take it, or someone starting an action and trying to change the ownership, the owner will be mandatorily notified about this action. and the owner can actually stop this action. But this is sort of deemed arrest of your own property, so the law allows you to put this deemed arrest and gives you 10 business days if you don't agree with what is happening with your property, but so you can just file to court. And in case this mechanism is violated, there is like stringent criminal liabilities introduced, up to 5 years of imprisonment for violation of this procedure. Well, we have this. The overall idea in our country now is bringing transparency, because it's difficult to do corruption when there is transparent processes. One of the best cases is the ProZorro system. This is public procurement, but when I'm talking about public procurement, maybe many Norwegian companies will want to send to our governmental agencies something. Before this ProZorro system, it was highly corrupted area of, you know, closed envelope with bids, somebody managing something, like disqualification of like businesses and like competitive bids and all that kind of things. Now, this process is extremely transparent. All the bids are published on website, journalists, media can monitor them. All the documents are in historic register, so if there is any investigation afterward that something was unfair, everything will be stored in the system, so, and subject to challenge. Really, the system is very progressive, and it brought us some savings in terms of state budget expenditures.
Could you please tell when this rules implemented?
It's already implemented, except
not fully. It's only partially implemented.
Yeah, but they have this timeline of going mandatory for like the first stage it was voluntary, but we are now having laws which puts the time schedule of where and when it is becoming mandatory. So actually, it's a trend of becoming mandatory. Anti-corruption reform. As you have heard, we have this electronic asset declaration system launched, again bringing transparency. I know that when, like from talking to people, like when this electronic declaration system was launched, and lots of judges retired from their offices, like from the court system, because they didn't want to disclose their assets. This was the first step, help us a bit to clean up our judicial system. We have a public register of corrupt officials. So a person which committed offense which is treated as corruption, irrespective whether it's a criminal offense or like, because under our law you can receive, depending on threshold, like administrative fine for corruption up to criminal fine. So there is a public register of people who committed this offense, irrespective whether it's like a criminal or administrative thing, and it's very detailed. It will, all the personal details, like position of the person, name, all the details will be disclosed. We have lots of public registered movable and immovable properties, property in the country which are subject to registration, are actually very transparent and disclosed. So for all our civil society, like anti-corruption people, like, you know, working, doing the researches, all they say it's great, like in the country with this transparency of checking the ownership, it's the way easier for them now to make publications about state officials, which, you know, who receive like a small state salaries but live in huge houses and drive luxury cars and attract lots of attention of people towards like this is public control over people gaining illegal wealth, but this is a good instrument, I guess, for civil society. The most important thing, whatever you do, if you don't have a normal court in the country, I mean, all this initiative will mean nothing. So judicial reform is one of the key reforms we are carrying out. Right now, the rebooting of Supreme Court of Ukraine is on its way. So we will have a new court with different specialized chambers. When the Supreme Court judges, each chambers will have 120 judges. When the Supreme Court will be like set up anew. The very positive thing about this is that the salary of Supreme Court judges are really going to be high. I know lots of very good lawyers practicing in the private, all the years practicing in the private industry, and very professional people they are very attracted by these opportunities, because you don't give up your the way, you have a good social protection on one thing. On the other thing, you can build your own legal system, not just say everything is bad, but now it can be your time to bring fairness and justice. What is interesting, because I was looking a lot in this competition, what is interesting is this competition. So they will test your knowledge of the law, of course, but the points when you earn by knowing on the law, it's just the minority of the points you learn. The majority of the points is different tests on your credibility, your psychological testing. All the candidates are published on the website, and the civic society is invited to comment on the candidates, so that there is a public control over the people there. The people who are going to elect them, there are lots of representatives from legal community and from civil society in these boards. The negative, but it's not the negative trend is here, which is that still the majority of people are from the current court system. So it's, of course, in many countries, you need to serve years and years to be part of the Supreme Court. And right now it's an opportunity when you are a professor in the university, or when you're a practicing lawyer, you can just jump quickly to the Supreme Court. But the thing is that with the practicing lawyers, they check, the requirements to allow practicing lawyers to be part of this competition is that they want you to be admitted to the bar and show, each year of admission, you need to have 10 years of admission. You need to show a court ruling when you actually represented the party. But with many lawyers, it happens that, for instance, high-profile lawyers, they engage teams, determine the strategics, by then not usually in the court themselves. So it excluded some very notable practitioners from this. But overall, there are lots of people, lots of good lawyers, never in court before, never in any corrupt self-dealing other things, and lawyers who are trying to bring the change. They are in this competition. Enforcement proceedings, it's still not launched, this one, but in terms of practice, but we already have the law because enforcement of court proceedings was another corrupted area in our country, and the enforcement was very low and poorly done, because they were all overburdened with work. But now it's with notaries, people can receive the license from the state after passing rigorous requirements, and now they can be private enforcers of the court rulings. So this was the way to bring some efficiency and eliminate corruption here. VAT, many investors were dealing some business in Ukraine, which was producing something and exporting. Over the last years, they had problems with VAT refunds, in terms of corruption. During Yanukovych regime, there were public admissions of foreign companies. Then they were asked bribes as a percentage of VAT refund. The percentage was 20%. You pay us 20% of your refund, and you get your refund. With this new mechanism, it put the VAT refund mechanism into publicity, because how the tax authorities played this and made this corrupted is that your applications, they decided by themselves which applications goes to the treasury and which don't, and they played with the line of applications. So that's how they were able to, gain some bribes from businesses allowing their applications to go back and forth. Now it's all public, so there is a register of these applications and can be checked and accessed. So the way to eliminate corruption is to bring transparency into the process, which were, corrupted before. We are talking about IT a lot, and for me as a tax lawyer, it's, I could not mention that we have a simplified tax system for IT specialists. So basically, because usually when you hire someone, you perceive that personal income tax as your cost if you want to attract a talented person. We have a flat tax rate of 5% of income. There is no problem with VAT because VAT is specifically included into this 5%. The individual, the threshold of his annual income could be up to this amount, and his monthly social contribution could be just that low as this one. They are really subject to a very minimal regulation, financial reporting, so the system is very easy to manage for them. The other thing is that just recently we adopted the law which simplifies formalities when you sign a contract and export your services. This affects IT as well. These contracts now can be in electronic format. If it's in English, you don't need to make a translation. So that some of the formalities were used to, facilitate this process. For IT companies, like here, this is also some of the things to mention. In addition to our corporate laws, our IT law right now, there is a huge discussion that our intellectual property rights protection laws are a bit outdated, and we need to bring some new law here. In different committees, we also discuss that there are many initiatives. But what I want to say is that when you hire Ukrainian IT professionals, for instance, as an independent contractor, for instance, the thing is that even if your contract is governed by a foreign law, Norwegian law, California law, you will be still subject to mandatory intellectual property regime in Ukraine, like transfer of IP rights, which arise in the territory of Ukraine. For instance, they write you a code, right? You still need to comply with that law. And there is a bit outdated procedure is that for this mandatory transfer of intellectual property right from this independent contractor to the company to occur, this intellectual property rights needs to be specifically described. Sometimes it's difficult because they write just a part of the code, they just write a small part of the code and you need to identify that, or just say that everything they download to the service is deemed to be transferred and signed. Each time you still need to sign a formal act of transfer. This is like a small formality which may look, but it's a very important formality to make your transfer of intellectual property rights valid from your Ukrainian contractors. Thank you. Yeah.
Question on this?
What?
So these favorable contingent tax conditions that you described, is it specifically for people who have the status private entrepreneur?
Yeah, correct.
And is there any risks that private entrepreneur system could actually be taken away from the IT industry?
Well, during Yanukovych time, they wanted to take it away, and they had a small Maidan another time, and they stopped just returning it back. The thing is that, yes, this system is, the system is not only for IT people. It covers lots of professionals, and there is some tax abuse here. And I have heard that IMF is requiring to cancel this system. But I've seen that the popularity, and especially among IT sector, and because IT is bringing lots of money into Ukrainian hard currency, I think there will be a strong opposition if they will try to cancel it. So really, I think that this system was in place since 1990s. This specifically system was introduced by Kuchma to bring some young people, to allow them to build small businesses. So maybe there may be some anti-abuse rules introduced, but I don't think that this system will be totally eliminated. Indeed, this is extremely popular in the country. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salar. This was very useful. Now it's 15 minutes coffee break. I have to ask you to please be back latest by 10 to 11 because we are a little bit behind schedule. And please go and have some coffee, talk to each other. Okay, let us now get ready to start again. So if everybody can find their seats. And so now you've been updated a bit on the Ukrainian business climate and how to do business in Ukraine. The next presentation would be devoted to Norwegian regulations. So we have now three speakers from KPMG, which will tell you about what Norwegian companies should be aware of when they want to employ Ukrainian labor. So please welcome Mr. Gjertrud Haugan Behringer, and then Mr. Håkon Raknes, and Miss Kristin Bardal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we will speak about what you should think about or at least be aware of when you are about to engage Ukrainian labor force in Norway. And that is, of course, a very broad scope. We have 30 minutes, so it goes without saying that this will be an overview and not a very detailed presentation, and that perhaps there will also be other things one should take into consideration. We will start off with, at least this is a knockout cooperation between Ukraine and Norway, which has functioned very well in the last years. So we'll see how it goes on. So at least one success story. That's good. The agenda, we will run through a little bit about labor law. Kristin will speak about immigration. We will have reporting obligations in Norway when you are entering Norway. We will say a little bit about tax and a little bit about Norwegian Social Security and membership in the Social Security in Norway. So,
thank you. We start with labor law. And we think that the main question you need to ask when engaging people from Ukraine is, how should I engage Ukrainian labor force? And second, are there conditions for using foreign labor force? And which law governs the employment, Norwegian or Ukrainian? And we have also some initial thoughts. It's important to distinguish between employee on one side and self-employed person on the other side. At the same time, is it hiring labor or do you subcontract work to a company in Ukraine? And as I stated here, distinguishing is of great importance when it comes to obligations for the parties involved, for the Norwegian company, for the Ukrainian employee, or the contractor in Ukraine. And we also want to mention that in Norway, the authorities will follow the substance over form principle, which means that it's very important to evaluate your needs and that all written agreements are in line with what you actually need and the way you want to operate. So, how to distinguish? And here's a list of factors that are essential for assessing whether it's hire labor or it's subcontracting. And it's almost the same factors which are applicable when you should evaluate whether it's an employee or a self-employed person. So for instance, if you take hire labor, what's typical for hire labor, it is that the work is managed by in this case, the Norwegian company. And the responsibility and risk concerning the end result is also borne by the Norwegian company. And when it comes to the price, it's typically a price per hour if you hire someone into Norway. And the scope of work, quite easy to define, you hire someone to work for you in Norway. And it's the Norwegian company who has the materials and tools necessary for doing the work. And of course, it's more or less opposite when it's a subcontracting. So one question you can ask is, Will the personnel you will hire from Ukraine be treated in the same way as your own employees? And of course, if the answer is yes, okay, then from a Norwegian perspective, it's most likely is regarded as an employee. So, some conditions to consider prior to hiring foreign employees. Based on Norwegian law, you have to ask yourself, is there admission to hire employees on temporary basis? And it's regulated in the Working Environment Act, and it contains rules about hiring people from man-foreign companies and other companies. And the different rules in these two situations.
May I ask one detailed question?
Yeah.
What defines what's the English word? The bemanningsbyrå, if I can use Norwegian word.
Yes, it's a company where they hire out more than 50% of its more than 50% of its employees. Is that you agree? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. That's then we have over to the next thing which should be considered, and that's related to wage requirements. In Norway, we have no statutory fixed minimum wage requirements. So in general, no provision about minimum wage. However, it can be that based on special provisions, you have to give a kind of minimum salary to the employees, and it's when it's in the public procurement, it can be based on directive on temporary agency work and general application of tariff agreements. So we have to make an evaluation whether this is applicable or not. When coming to Norway with a foreign education or foreign professional qualifications, it's important to check whether you need the recognition of your education in order to practice your profession here. And here's just an example of some industries or some kind of work you're going to do where you need approval of qualification before you start to work. And then to the last question when it comes to hiring in labor force, and that's the question, is the Norwegian or Ukrainian labor law applicable? And as a starting point, the employment is regulated by Ukrainian rules when Ukrainian labor force are in Norway on temporary assignment. However, there are certain mandatory rules in the Norwegian Environment Act which is applicable. And here we have mentioned some examples which is important, and that's the working hours. We've been talking about minimum wage and expense coverage of expenses, and also regulation related to health, safety, and environmental rules. And then Christine?
Yeah. And can you hear me? Is this working? Yeah, good. And we also feel that it's important to stress the importance of making sure that any foreign employees you send to Norway to work here for a limited period of time is also equipped with the right permit to stay in Norway. Norwegian immigration authorities and the police, they are getting more and more active in making sure that the regulations are actually followed. So when talking here today, I know I have like 5-6 minutes. I was wondering, should I spend these minutes scaring you off, making you understand that this is a topic that you really need to pay attention to? Or should we discuss the specific regulations? So a little bit of both. The police are now walking the streets of Norway, and they are stopping individuals that seem like they're from a different country. They ask if you have the valid permit to stay in Norway. And if you're not able to present either a residence card or some documentation that you have a legal stay here, they will take you into the central arrest. They will interview you. They will give you 2 hours to provide the necessary documentation. And if you can't do so, you might be expelled from Norway for a certain period of time. We have seen this recently in cases where we have been involved, and people have been stopped in routine controls of a vehicle in the streets on a Saturday morning, and on Tuesday they're put on a plane and sent out of Norway. So it's really important. A legal stay in Norway, there's different terms to be used here on different bases. I'm sure you're familiar with the visa. A visa can be issued for the purpose of visiting family or friends, or it could be for business reasons. A lot of foreigners tend to apply for a visa if they know that they're not going to be in Norway for a very long time. But you should be aware that on a visa, you're only entitled to enter Norway and to stay here for a period of up to 90 days. If your intention is to do something else than staying in Norway and participating in meeting, coffee table discussions and so forth, then you're not allowed to do this under the visa. So the alternative to the visa is to apply for a residence permit for work. So if you're going to do any kind of hands-on work in Norway, you will have to apply for a residence permit. As we are here today talking about Ukraine, this is based on the regulation for third country nationals, because Ukraine is not in the EU. There are special regulations for nationals from EU and EEA area.
May I ask one detail?
Yeah.
To my understanding, you can use a business visa if you are here to negotiate contracts,
yeah.
If you are to clarify specifications, if there's a question of getting domain knowledge from a customer you have.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the activity that is to be performed for each trip. I would say that business meetings, short duration, just to discuss issues, fact findings, and so forth, that's within the business visa. However, if it's tending towards the workshop where you're actually performing work, you're doing something that's really relevant and necessary for the project to be completed, then you're in the gray zone. And this is, of course, one of the challenges, evaluating when do you need, when is it regarded as work and when is it an activity that's permitted under a business visa. I will come back to that. This is just to illustrate that the further away from Norway your nationality is, the stricter the regulations is. So Nordic countries, there's no immigration regulations. For EU and EEA nationals, there's a simplified registration procedure. And for third country nationals, here under Ukraine nationals, there is a requirement for a residence permit in Norway if you intend to work here. And you must apply for and be granted such a permit before you can start working. It's a common misunderstanding that it's the duration of your stay that decides whether or not you can do this under a business visa or whether you need to apply for a work permit. So please don't fall for that. Even if you're here for a few hours, a few days, it might be necessary for your workers or yourself to hold a residence permit for work. This is the definition that the immigration authorities have set forth in this circular letter, where they are informing about exemptions from the work permit requirement. And as you can see, this is kind of a broad interpretation. It's not a lot you need to do here for the immigration authorities to define this as work. It doesn't matter if it's paid or unpaid. Sorry. Or if it's material or more intangible nature of the work. They specify here, it doesn't take much for a performance to be deemed to constitute work. So of course it's easy to go to the embassy and file an application for a business visa, because if you provide the information and only attending meetings, you will be granted the visa. But the problem starts when you enter Norway and if you are stopped in one of these controls and you can't document that the activity you're actually doing in Norway corresponds with the information you provided when you went to the Norwegian embassy in Ukraine. And luckily there's some exemptions to the work permit requirement, especially two categories. One of them is for work engagements that has a very short duration, up to 3 months. But again, I need to stress that there's only specific groups of people that are able to practice this exemption. Here's a few examples. commercial and business travelers, this is the typical business visa where you do a little bit more than just participate in coffee table meetings. Persons with technical qualifications, that's an exemption that's relevant to a lot of people, at least to consider. But in this circular letter, which I strongly recommend that you read, there's about 2 pages of more information about all the requirements that needs to be fulfilled for you to be able to practice this exemption. Also some exemption for in-house training in international companies. The other main group of exemptions is for third country nationals that are employed in a company that operates within the EU area. I'm not going to go into that, but there's also a circular letter for those exemptions. You can find it here. That's basically what I have time to say now, but I will be here after this session. If you have any questions related to immigration, please come and talk to me. I will also leave my business cards here on the counter, and also a few copies of the mentioned circular letter with the exemption, so you can bring when you go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, if you've finally been able to enter Norway without being thrown out again, it's time to look at the reporting obligations that you might have when you come to Norway. And as it's mentioned here, it's several reporting obligations. And it is very important to be compliant towards those obligations. We have a new law in Norway from 1st of January called the Norwegian Skatteforvaltningsloven, my translation, Norwegian Tax Administration Act. It might be something else, the official translation when they get to it, but let's call it that for once. It's found in section 7.6, but the rules are old, and the objective of this reporting is just for the tax authorities to be able to know who are in Norway, which companies are here, and which people are here. The rules came back in the 1970s when we found oil outside the west coast of Norway, and suddenly the whole of Stavanger was filled out with Englishmen and Americans, no one paying taxes. The tax authorities did not like that, so they kind of invented this reporting system, and we have had it for the last 40 years or something. So it gives the authorities an overview and the possibility to control taxpayers, or at least individuals in Norway, and to find out whether or not they are to pay taxes. You need to do the reporting when someone gives you an assignment in Norway, and it might be an assignment as a subcontractor, or if you are a temporary agency hiring out manpower in Norway, you also have to report that. So an assignment is a contract where you either come to Norway and make something, or if you just hire out labor. Reporting obligations are common. It doesn't matter if you hire out people or if you're a subcontractor. You need it. We call it the RF 1199 reporting, and that's because the forms are called RF 1199. And you report both the contract, so the contract between the Norwegian company and the Ukrainian company is reported on page 1. Page 2, you report all the employees. So if you have one contract with 12 employees, then you report one contract on page 1, and you report all the 12 employees when they enter and leave Norway. Typically, building or assembly sites, if you build houses, roads, railways, but also if you have an IT contract and you have IT people from Ukraine entering Norway, sitting in Norway and doing actual work, those contracts needs to be reported, and those employees does also need to be reported on the RF 1199. And as it says down here, there's no minimum length. So basically, if you are one day in Norway on an assignment which is covered by this reporting system, you need to report it, unless it's worth less than 10,000 miles, which is not very much actually.
What about business that was closed before 2017. They need to go into this, or has not?
If you think that you have had contracts in 2016 and 15 that has not been
ongoing in
reported,
2017,
yes.
you have to go into this as well, or
yes,
just for new business?
No, I would. If you have not done this, I would start doing the reporting, so that to make sure that I am compliant.
Also retrospective.
Yeah.
For 5 years.
So when you let's say you have a contract that started in 2016, you have not reported it, and you find out, okay, I'm going to KPMG, they say I should do this, so let's start do this. Then you should retrospectively report it back to 2016. Yeah. So both the contract and the employees, and it should be done as soon as possible after the contract has been signed. You have a 14 days threshold, and you report, when you report the contract, you report the start and the proposed end of the contract, and when you report the employees, you report them entering Norway and leaving Norway. This is how it looks if you try to put it up on the scheme. This is the Norwegian company who gives the contract, and then you have the different foreign companies, in this case Ukrainian companies. And you have reporting duties all the way down for contract and employees. This is SFU, or KOFTA as it's named in English, Central Office for Foreign Tax Affairs, and this is the tax collector. If you do not pay, or if you do not report, then you can be fined. And those fines are new for 2017. And they are, in certain cases, limited to 52,450. In other cases, there are also possible to get additional fees. Since these fees are new, we have tried to find out how they will do this in practice, and we have not actually been able to get an answer yet from the tax authorities. What happened is that they have been quite strict until 2015, beginning of 2016, and then they have somehow lowered the activity during 2016. But they might, and the reason for that is that the rules will probably change either mid of 2017 or beginning of 2018. I'll get back to that. But at least these are currently the new fees that you might get if you do not do this reporting. We have had several clients who come to us and said, I have been fined by the tax authorities. I haven't done my reporting, and we have seen that they have actually been paying many hundreds of 100,000 Norwegian NOK to tax authorities for not doing this reporting. So please try to be compliant on that. As I said, the rules will change. The Ministry of Finance has suggested changes. They have put it out on a public hearing, and it's uncertain what the changes will be. There will be a reporting system of the RF 1199. You will still have to report both the contract and the employee. The changes might be that this company, as it is today, you will have responsible for all your subcontractors. One change might be that they stop here. You have only responsibility for 2 steps down. That might be one change. So we'll have to see. They said earliest summer 2017, but this is the government. It might not be until January 2018. We'll have to see. In addition to the RF 1199 reporting, there are also some other reporting requirements when you are a foreign company with workers in Norway. You have to register the Ukrainian company in Norway. The employee has to go to an ID check at the tax office. You have to report salary, withheld taxes, and the employees might also have to do tax returns. Many of these requirements applies regardless of tax liability to Norway. And the RF 1199 reporting also applies regardless of tax liability. Many companies believe that, okay, well, we're just entering Norway, no one becomes tax liable, everything's fine, we have a business visa, might be fine, might not be fine. But you still have the reporting obligations. And that is some of the critique against the rules, is that they are not linked to whether or not there is an actual tax liability to Norway. So let's say a little bit about tax liability. Corporate taxation, short about that. For a Ukrainian company to become tax liable to Norway, they have to get what we call a permanent establishment according to the tax treaty between Norway and Ukraine. To get a permanent establishment, there are basically three, or at least three main rules which needs to be fulfilled. First of all, the company needs to perform taxable activity in Norway, the way it is defined in Norwegian tax law. Then the company needs a fixed place of business in Norway, and it needs to spend a certain time in Norway. This seems quite easy to understand. It is not quite easy to understand. There have been written several books about this, and people discuss this all the time, but this is basically the three rules. If you fulfill them, then we have a permanent establishment in Norway, and if you have a permanent establishment in Norway as a company, you might become tax liable to Norway, presuming that you have income that you can allocate to the permanent establishment. So if you have a permanent establishment, the answer to that is yes, okay, do I have any income that should be allocated to the permanent establishment? If the answer to that is yes, okay, then I have taxable income. If I have no income, then okay, then I have no taxable income, but I still probably will need to file a tax return for my permanent establishment. If the answer to the first question is, do I have a permanent establishment? The answer is no. Well, okay. Then you're fine. In Norway, at least. Some key considerations when establishing a PE. Some cases, as we've seen, there'll be no tax in Norway. If you have no income, no tax. You have a limited tax liability. You're only tax liable for the income which could be allocated to the activity that you perform in Norway. If the allocation is done wrongly, then the tax authorities might say that it'll be tax evasion. You should have allocated income, or you have allocated too much costs to Norway. Or worst case, there might be double tax if Norway and Ukraine does not agree on whether or not there is a permanent establishment in Norway, and Norway tax and Ukraine will not give you a credit for taxes paid in Norway. This seldom happens. So tax liability for the employee. Well, if you are a Ukrainian employee entering Norway, then you're tax liable from day one in Norway if you have a Norwegian employer. Or if you're hired in by a Norwegian employer, then you're tax liable for day one. Or if you're hired in by a foreign company, a Ukrainian company, with a permanent establishment in Norway, then you're also tax liable to Norway from day one for your salary income derived from the work that is performed in Norway. If you, however, are employed in a foreign company who does not have a permanent establishment in Norway and you're not hired in, then you do not have a tax liability to Norway unless you stay more than 183 days in Norway during a 12-month period, or more than 270 days during a 36-month period in Norway, which is 90 days per year for 3 years. Then you will become tax resident of Norway according to the Norwegian Tax Act. But please bear in mind that there is a double tax treaty between Norway and Ukraine, and the purpose, of course, is to avoid double taxation. So if Norway has the right to tax, then Ukraine will give you credit in taxes which is to be paid in Ukraine. A little bit about Social Security.
Yes, I think very, very short. Time is running so fast, and you're probably hungry, waiting for the food and the networking. So I will share very little about social security because it's on the slide. It's quite easy to understand, and it will be sent to you after this seminar. So the main issue when it comes to social security is that currently there is no agreement between Norway and Ukraine regarding social security. So if a person is coming into Norway and are working in Norway, either for a Norwegian company or for a Ukrainian company, they are actually a member in the Norwegian social security scheme, and they should be paying Norwegian social security contribution, both the employee part and the employer part, and you can see it here. So this is a short introduction to the Norwegian social security scheme. I think that's all we can say about it. Maybe if there's a question, you can ask me afterwards, or?
Then a question.
Yeah?
When I have a business friend from Ukraine visiting Norway for contract discussions for 1 day or 3 days, I never used to report anything.
No. That's more the reporting
Are you referring to the reporting obligation I spoke about?
Yes.
Yes, because the question is basically, when these people enter Norway, are they in Norway working, have they been given an assignment in Norway, or are they merely on a business travel to Norway, where they sit down and negotiate contracts? And that is an ongoing question with the Central Office of Foreign Tax Affairs, which seems to believe that anyone entering Norway is on an assignment, unless you have skis on your shoulders or something like that. But yes, there is. You have to differentiate between contract negotiations and actually being given an assignment. So let's say that you enter Norway and you sit down and you negotiate: should I or should I not build this house in Norway? Then you could say that the contract negotiation might be a business trip which is not reportable on the RF 1199. But when you enter and start building, then of course you perform work and you have an assignment in Norway.
The lawyer from Ukraine doesn't start building. The lawyer from Ukraine doesn't start building.
No, he doesn't start building. But a lawyer could also have an assignment. It depends upon what he's doing in Norway.
He's making a contract.
Yeah, I understand that.
He's not signing
no.
the contract.
He must not sign it, because then there might be other problems if you sit down and sign contracts in Norway. It is not an easy yes or no question that you're asking, because the tax authorities often tend to say that anyone entering Norway and enters KPMG or any other office in Norway should be reported in one way or the other.
You will need an officer in the airport saying you are going to sign.
One should believe that, but on the other hand, and I think that most colleagues of mine, KPMG and all the other consulting firms will agree that if you enter Norway to sit down and negotiate, and you're in Norway for 2 days or something, and you go back, you should be fine not doing the RF 1199 reporting.
No, but if you give a speech like in this conference here,
yeah,
then he has done some work, and
then the Norwegian authorities might say that you should be reported. But I think that if you enter Norway, you stay for 1 day or 2, you might give a speech and you go back. I still would say that's fine.
So the solution that you come to negotiate contract to us.
Yeah.
Negotiate contract with Ukraine.
Yes, for at around Christmas, we should have contract negotiations in Norway. But my Ukrainian friends didn't get a visa, so we met in Israel.
That's another solution.
Yeah. Somehow the Norwegian tax authorities is not interested in that, so believe it or not.
Yes, that was actually our presentation, and we also want to mention that we have, of course, colleagues in Ukraine working in KPMG in Ukraine, and they are, of course, also interested in assisting you if you have any questions. And we have some slides from them representing top issues which is important in Ukraine, and also an overview of the assistance they can provide. and the number of persons you can contact if you have any questions.
Are you going to share this presentation?
Yes, yeah, we will share this presentation, so you will receive it. Yeah,
Thank you.
it will receive public presentation. Yes. Okay, so I think that's all. We have used too much time. I'm sorry for that.
Thank you very much. I think you managed to cover a lot in this short time. It was a lot of information. And now I will just leave the floor to my colleague Kjartan Pedersen again. He will wrap up the day.
Yes, thank you, Linda, and thank you to the KPMG team. I hope everyone here agrees when I say that it's been a very interesting day. I've learned a lot, at least myself. I hope the same is the same case with you. I'm just going to very quickly what? And okay, yes. Last year was a special year and a very good year in strengthening relations between our two countries. Of course, exemplified by the first meeting in the Bilateral Trade Commission and further cemented in the presidential visit to Norway. And we're also happy to say that our NUBF, attended by Prime Minister Solberg and President Poroshenko, together with 300 other participants, was a great success. But with the momentum from last year's political push, we believe that this year it's important that the business steps up and increases and strengthens the bilateral trade between our two countries. And as we've seen here today, the opportunities are out there. The road ahead isn't necessarily straightforward, but if you steer it well, it can and will be rewarding. And NUCC, we are here to help bilateral trade to materialize and grow. And our team might not be very big, but we have a good backing with a large or a big board of directors team, which is very active and has long and good experience in doing business between Norway and Ukraine. And of course, in addition to Linda that you already met and myself, we also have Henrik, who is on the live stream now, but he is ill this week. And also Dmitry Primak, he's our local advisor based in Kiev. So if you have any issues, you can also contact him. We're all here to help all our members. Okay, so in order to continue and increase the interaction and facilitate future business, we would like you all to sort of take up your phones and save some dates for this following 6 months. First of all, if you know anyone who can be of interest for this Young Entrepreneurs Program that Roman so well advertised today, we have a 15th of February deadline that we want more candidates to apply, and especially Norwegian candidates. There's a very big demand on the Ukrainian side, but we need more Norwegian people. Also, this year is kind of special because there's a Eurovision in Ukraine, and we need to and we want to sort of monetize on positive news about Ukraine in Norwegian media. So Eurovision contest will be in May, and in mid-March we will have a tourism / Grand Prix event here in Oslo, where we also will invite business in, and together with the news media. In 20th of April, for NUCC members, we have a General Assembly. And on the 4th of May, we are very happy to say that we will, together with the Norwegian, the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprises, NHO, will have what we call the morning coffee event, where we will touch upon Ukraine and CSR issues, especially. 4th of May. And also, for you people on the live stream or here, we will have a networking meeting in Kiev on the 15th of June. And also, just the last sort of issue is that we would like also to reach further outside of Oslo, where also a lot of other businesses have not yet sort of been approached by us and to look into Ukraine as an opportunity. And Stavanger and Bergen will be our first stops on a sort of a NUCC roadshow, as we call it, this summer and autumn. Okay, so that's just to sort of end up. I want to thank KPMG very much for kindly hosting this event. We really appreciate your assistance, and we look forward to our continued cooperation. And I urge everyone here to have some words with them afterwards. Also, as was mentioned here, I took office just a month ago, and Armin Myklebust, our former managing director, we would just like to give you some flowers for your very enthusiastic work. Linda, do you have, maybe you can come up here, Armin? You have shown an limitless enthusiasm for Ukraine, and you have worked very, very hard throughout this year, and we really appreciate your efforts, so please. So, two words, okay.
This was unexpected, and I would say that this is also for the team, for Charta, Linda, and Henrik. They have been a good team, and I'm really missing the office actually every morning. Okay, look forward to cooperate with all of you in 2017. We have some plans.
Thank you, Armin. Okay, so thank you all for coming. This is, but this is not the end. This is only the beginning of the mingling and the networking part. So please, I urge everyone to go outside and spend some time to talk to each other, and let's look into the opportunities of Ukraine. So thank you all.